Hi, well, my name is Janie Scott, and I'm the director and the choreographer for this production of Little Women. I'm very used to wearing two hats. For all of my directing career, I've always been a director-choreographer. So they feel very intertwined for me. Creating dances for the characters and for what's happening at the moment on stage, it just makes complete sense to me because it's a continuation of, generally speaking, a continuation of the scene. And I'm very, obviously, very in tune with the scene because I've just blocked it or I've just done something with those characters. So it feels like a natural extension for me to go ahead and do that. And when I think about a show, I see it that way. I see it all the way through as a musical with songs, with dances, and this is what they'd be, and whatever. So the hats don't feel that different to me. I think it's just kind of one strange hat I've always worn. Well, I did start out as a performer. I did have a career in New York with Broadway shows and national tours and all of that, which I did for about a decade, and traveled, played Chicago and all the big cities and LA. And all of it was a dream come true. And there just kind of came out a crossroads. It was kind of a strange crossroads where I ended up through the timing of where I was at the time, which was here in the Bay Area visiting family, and San Jose State University knocking on my door to come and just teach a master class or do something small. And I thought, okay, I could do that. I just left Cats and they wanted a Cats, masterclass. And I did it, and I had a surprisingly wonderful time. And long story short, that developed into more, and the next thing I know, I've been there for almost 30 years, becoming a tenured professor and having a performing company there, and everything was musical theater there that I did. So it was all of the things I was very good at, from teaching vocalists to training dancers to putting things together to actually even writing things and being a director. So I was doing all of that, and when it came time to retire, I thought I'd take a break and then kind of see what else was out there. I was unaware, literally, of everything that was going on in relation to theater that was outside the university, because everything I directed was there. The only things I directed were in the summer. That was the only time I had free, and that's when I did about 17 seasons at Cabrillo Stage, because it actually allowed me to still work with my job at the university. But I didn't know what the Bay Area had in terms of theater, and I thought, well, I'm going to take a little time to check out all of that. And I ended up with not having any time before somebody came knocking on my door, hearing I had retired, and said, would you come please direct and choreograph blah 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 for me? And it was at a different theater, and I said, sure. And I ended up doing 5 shows for them in a row before I knew it hit me. And then I started expanding when I realized what the other theaters were in the area. And every one of them has its own landscape, so to speak. They're different in feeling, they're different in culture. I love all of that. I love being able to work with a couple of different theaters and feel the difference in how creatives work together to put together a season or to put together a show. And I got a call, this is 12 years ago. The first show I did for SBMT was 12 years ago. And it was a production of Gypsy, a very, very long time ago. And I'm trying to remember how that landed in my boat, and I honestly can't remember. All I know is somebody knocked on my door, basically, and asked me to come do it, and I wasn't so sure, and I finally agreed, and I did that show, and then I didn't do anything back here until I did On the Town several years ago, which was right on the tail end of the pandemic. Basically, we were still testing people all the time coming into the theater, and that meant the staff and the crew and going through all of that. And that's when a lot of us got COVID and did all that. So I did that, and then nothing until I was doing other shows in between all the time, and then coming in to do this show. And it was because Walter connected with me and asked me if I would like to do this show. There's a couple things. One of the reasons is maybe a little bit more logistical and not so much, into the show itself, was I'm used to doing more often than not these big shows. I'm tapped to do big shows of casts of 25 to 30, big dance numbers, lots of things going on. Those were the kind I was doing, and I was here and there. I've done smaller shows, and I love doing the smaller shows. I can't remember the last time I worked with a small cast where you actually really get to know everybody in the cast, and everything just seems a little bit calmer. The other thing was, Little Women was a show I've never done before, and I really am attracted to shows I've never done before, because I like to learn about them. And Little Women was really one I knew very little about. And so going into it and knowing I was going to be researching a lot because of the time period, which is very important to understand these characters, to understand their lives, to understand everything that's going on, whether it's with a prop, with a costume, or with the character during this very specific time period. What was the social fabric of 1860? And to delve into all of that is something I really, really enjoy. The songs are all storytelling songs. They aren't the kind of song that, generally speaking, an audience member might go out singing. There's a song called Astonishing, probably the most well-known song, but a lot of the other songs aren't known at all, and they're written very specific to the characters to help continue to tell the story of where they are at a given time, or what's happening with their significant other, or any of those things. And I just love those storytelling songs. Auditions were open, people came in and auditioned, and I chose the ones that I thought best suited the characters I was looking for, with the talents and the abilities I was looking for. And I think I knew one or two in the cast, and the rest were brand new. And I love working with people that I've worked with before, but I also thoroughly enjoy meeting new people and working with brand new actors and getting to know them. I think that's, there's a joy in that for me. There really is. Lighting, Noah, he just did my last show. So I met him on my last show that I did, which was at a different theater production of Gypsy. And he and I got to know each other a lot because he has a very interesting way of working. He really wants to kind of get into the head. He wanted to get into my head about what I was seeing on stage and what was happening, and very much into the texture of a scene and things. So we spent a fair amount of time talking about those things, which I think is great. And he's a very collaborative artist. He knows his stuff. I mean, it's all the right things. For costumes, Sharon Pang. Who doesn't want Sharon Pang at any given time? What is she doing? 5 or 6 shows at a time? So very fortunate to have her on this. Speaking with her, while we were first starting rehearsal about all of this, and finding out that she's done, I think this is her 3rd production of Little Women, having done a production at Theater Works and whatever. So I was like, she knows her stuff. She's so specific, and she is a workhorse, and I mean that as a complete and total compliment, to turn out what you need and what you want to have here. That's amazing. For my set design, I had Michael Hirsch, which is a new treat for me. I had never worked with Michael on this, and we sat down and talked, and he is so easygoing and asks questions as you're going through all of this in an effort to understand what you're talking about and what you're telling him. And easygoing is a great thing. I would say the entire creative staff has that, which means you're never hearing yelling and screaming anywhere. So Michael's been wonderful on this, and we've kind of joined together with Don is doing the projections, and I've seen some of his work with some of these projections on some of these shows, and I'm astounded at just how beautiful they are and how well they work and interact and become integral to the show and to the set. And so I was anxious to work with him on this, and we'll be starting to get into that in a week or so, but between he and I and Michael, we've kind of talked about things related to the set and what's going on with it. And it's just felt so easy and so much that people understand each other. I would give an A+ for communication with so much of this. First of all, I'd say, if you're familiar with the book, let's say you read it maybe in middle school or high school, I'd say don't let that be what leads you to or from this show. I would say think about going to see a theatrical event that is going to touch your heart in some places deeply, at the same time make you laugh, at the same time be thought-provoking about contemporary issues, even from a show that takes place in 1860, to see a cast that so totally embodies all of these characters in the best of ways, with stunning voices and wonderful acting abilities. They just make all of this happen. They've become a family so quickly, and it has been joyous. It's been astounding. So to come see something so unique and special that isn't done anywhere very often at all, it's like this jewel that you'll want to come see and kind of file it away with, I've seen all these other shows, some big, some are smaller, some are crazy, some are serious, and then there's this one that in some ways also almost defies description, but is a complete and total gem of its own.